Sunday night, we saw the Pittsburgh Steelers take on the Las Vegas Raiders, and the last Monday, we saw the Pittsburgh Steelers take on the Cleveland Browns. I'm going to talk about both of those games today and explain why I didn't put out a video last week talking about the Browns. I'm Brian, and this is Steel Nation.
Here we go, Steelers, here we go. Pittsburgh's going to the Super Bowl, here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen and fans of the Pittsburgh Steelers, welcome back to Steel Nation, the officially unofficial Pittsburgh Steelers fan channel. I'm your host, Brian, and these past 2 weeks have been very hectic for the Steelers. I'm talking about the win against the Browns, the really dirty game against the Browns, and then just last night, as of recording this, going up against the Las Vegas Raiders and nearly losing. The only reason we won that game was because of a stupid call that Josh McDaniels made at the end of the fourth quarter, giving us the ball back with plenty of time to run the clock out. And so we're going to talk about that, but first, I want to talk about why I didn't put up a video last week. And it has nothing to do with my schedule, because I had the video filmed, I had it sent to my editor, and she had gotten done editing it. She put it up in the drive. I watched it, and I liked it. The editing looked good. The issue that I had was with some of the things that I was talking about. I like to do these off script, which means I only usually have notes in front of me, and I didn't even have that for the Browns game because I didn't write them. I just started filming. And listening back through the game, I just wasn't all that happy with how I articulated some things. I was reacting to one of the comments left on the previous video, and I didn't like the way that I had handled it. So instead of putting it out there or going back and refilming it, I just let it be and thought that I'd cover it today. And so that's why there wasn't a video last week. It's just my, dislike of the product that I made, and I want to make sure that I put out good content for you guys. Content that is that builds everybody up. Content that, is well thought out and well made, and I didn't think that was what that video was. I thought that it was not my best and that I could do better. So I canned that video, and I decided to work on this video, do just a double review for both the Browns game and the Raiders game. And I also set up a little background, so it's a little bit different than my wall, and also I was having a lot of trouble with my green screen in the sitting position. Normally I use it when I'm standing, so I put up a couple of things to decorate the background. I got my terrible towel hanging up there instead of just being on a couple of hooks. I had the Steelers blanket just lying around, thought I'd hang it up, and there's my Troy Polamalu jersey that I usually wear, but today I thought, I'd just hang it up there, have it over there. And in the future, I definitely want to change up how things look, because this is really not all that great. I want to have some stuff on a table in front of me instead of a tray table. I'm going to have a proper studio setup. But that's what I've been working on since the last upload, which was the San Francisco game. And so, yeah, that's about it. All right, so let's start by talking about the Steelers-Browns game, which is basically the definition of what I said in my opening video for the channel, that this division is going to be a bloodbath. That video, it wasn't just difficult, it was literally a bloodbath. There was injury after injury. Speaking of which, prayers for Nick Chubb. I hope he feels better. He is one of the few football players that are not a Steeler that I hope, that I like outside of football, and that I hope, has a good career. That injury was rough, man. I wasn't originally planning on looking at the injury after the game, but it just kind of appeared on Twitter, just uncensored, nothing about it, just the photo. And so I looked at it, and since I'd seen it, I decided to analyze it. And by analyze it, I mean I just stared at it for a couple of minutes to see what was going on, and it looked really bad. A lot of people in the comments were talking about flamingo leg, and that's basically what it looked like. His leg looked like it was bending backwards. But, and this was put out by the Browns, I'm pretty sure, they were saying that he only tore his MCL in his leg. I don't know if that means that his leg was also dislocated, because if it was, then that's going to be a lot more damage. But if it's only his MCL, then that means he's out for 8 to 9 months. That means he's out the rest of the season, but he will be back next season, which is good. I want him to come back because he's young. He's got such a long career ahead of him. And if this is what takes him out, that would be awful. And I get he's a Browns player, and as a Steelers fan, we hate the Browns. But he's also a human, and he just seems like a nice guy. Like, if he was on, like, the 49ers or even the Bengals, for me, I'd be A-okay with rooting for him. And, I mean, I have him on one of my fantasy leagues, so, of course, I've got to root for him. But, you know, he's a Browns player and all that. Again, though, I hope he's okay. I hope he does better. Aside from that, like, Minkah Fitzpatrick on that same play seemed to get hurt, had something going on with his chest. Several other players on both sides of the ball went down during that game. So hopefully they all get better. We're still without Cameron Hayward. He's going to be out for at least until week 8 from what I heard. He had surgery. So hopefully we can hold off and we can do good until he comes back. But it just seems like we're always one man short on the defense. Whether it was TJ Watt last year, Cam Hayward this year, we just never fully healthy. And that really sucks because, like, we have a really good defense. At least it's now showing. And we're just not healthy. So if we can get healthy, I think that we can really start putting some quarterbacks in their place. We did that week 2 with Deshaun Watson, though he just didn't seem all that good to begin with. So I don't think there was too much that we could have done differently to, you know, change the outcome of that game. It was still a very close game. It was 26-22, but Deshaun Watson just looked not great. And the Watts to Watson connection, it was just right on point. He didn't get too many sacks on him, but he had a lot of pressures on Watson. He was really, really working. I think he had 1 sack on Watson. But that defense last Monday was really working and really, like, proving why they're a good defense. The secondary still looked not great. They definitely looked better. Minkah Fitzpatrick really has not had the same season that he did last year. So I wouldn't even say that he is, like, the star safety in the NFL anymore. Hopefully he gets back to that status, because for a while he was considered the number 1 safety in the NFL, but he just hasn't looked like that in the past couple weeks, actually the whole season, and hopefully we can get back there. We also had Patrick Peterson. He looked a little bit better, the number 20. Not the greatest, but still a little bit better. Our offense. Let's talk about the offense in week 2. We looked better. Kenny Pickett started to look more comfortable in the pocket, though he didn't really get much time in said pocket because the pocket is, well, it's about the same as it was last season. It looks more like Swiss cheese than it does a hot pocket. But, you know, well, there's really not much you can expect. Like, we didn't do too much over the offseason. Like, we brought in an offensive tackle, was it? From the Eagles, and then we drafted Broderick Jones. I don't know if he's been playing or not, but we still got Larry Ogunjobi, and it just looks like last year's offensive line. Maybe a little bit better, but not great. Like, they're not giving any room for Najee Harris to run. Jaylen Warren has been doing really well. He's able to bust through the line and make it very long, like, yardage gains. But Harris ain't looking too great because of the line. And then Pickett is constantly having to roll out to get his shots off because the line is constantly crumbling, and that's resulted in several sacks in the past 2 games. But honestly, the offense did pretty well. Calvin Austin III did good. I think George Pickens did really well, being elevated to that wide receiver 1 slot. Allen Robinson II looked pretty good. But a lot of that, and the next thing I'm going to talk about, were really elevated again in the Raiders game. And the thing I want to talk about next is that Matt Canada needs to go. In last Monday's game against the Browns, he looked bad. It was run, pass, run, pass, run, pass. If it wasn't run, pass, it was pass that's dropped, pass that's dropped, pass that's caught, or pass that's dropped, pull everybody off. We might have scored more points last week if we would have gone for it on 4th down every single time that 4th down came, because that was every time we took the field. Like, we were constantly hitting 4th and just punting it away, and we just looked bad on offense. And I mean, the offensive players themselves looked good, but we started getting predictable. the Browns started like being able to sniff out where the ball was going to go just based on the earlier game. And that's not a great thing for an offensive coordinator, but that did change in week 3. It actually changed for the better. And so I'm going to talk about so now let's talk about our win against the Raiders. And the first thing I want to talk about is I want to tell you the importance of not jinxing the team. So a buddy of mine from church, he was texting me throughout the game. I'm not going to give his name. I don't want to give him any, because I don't have any bad blood towards him. I love the guy. He's a really good friend. The only issue is he was texted me halfway through the game. We're up 23-7, and he's like, dude, I think we're going to win this. And if you've been around football enough, you know you don't ever say that when you're watching a game, especially not one where it's, questionable if you will win, like going into it, or if you've been having a rough season, or even if you're having a good, just don't say that in general, because the second that he said that is when the Raiders started their comeback tour. Like, it was 23-7, and by the end of the game, we were running on the final, minute and a half, questioning if they could make the comeback. Now, obviously, they didn't, because Josh McDaniels, instead of having them go for it on 4th down, in their own side of the field, mind you, in our territory, not there, but in our territory, in the red zone, they kicked a field goal to try and get the ball back. At that point, they were down 23-15. They're down by 8, and they'd already converted to 2nd down. So they could have run it in, and let's say they turned over the ball. Oh, well, if you kick a field goal, you still have to run it back down the field and put it in, because you're not down by 7, you're not down by 6, you're down by 8. You'd need 3 field goals to make it, or you run it in now, try for the point after 10. If you fail it, you're at least up 6. Now all you need is a field goal. What they should have done is they should have gone for it, but they didn't, and that allowed us to hold on to the lead for that game and ultimately win it. A stupid call by Josh McDaniels, I will say that, but as a Steelers fan, I'm happy he made that call, because I was really worried about that game. At the same time as all that was going on, our offense looked better than it did even the week prior. George Pickens got a couple of catches. So did Calvin Austin III. He actually got a 75-yard catch and run for the end zone, giving him, I think it might be his first catching touchdown of the season, or maybe his second, which was incredible. He catches the ball and there's just a wide open lane. It was like George Pickens from Monday. It was like him against the Browns, but it was Calvin Austin III. And that, I thought, was really good. That was really good. Same with George Pickens. He had a good evening. Not a great one, but it was good. He had about 75 yards. Allen Robinson II had some good catches. And so, neither of them scored any touchdowns. The only 2 touchdowns scored were by Calvin Austin III and Pat Freiermuth, which were good. And then the rest was field goals. But we did good. Boswell, as always, put them in there. He didn't doink anything this time, which was good. The defense also looked great. TJ Watt looked good. He always looks good. I mean, it's TJ Watt. What do you expect? He is always going to look good. Minka Fitzpatrick got what I thought was a really good hit off on the Raiders quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo, but he was called for roughing the passer, which even the announcers thought was a bullcrap call, because sure, it looked kind of violent, but the helmet wasn't lowered down. He just, he leaned in because, he's trying to tackle somebody. Their shoulders touched, then the helmets touched, but they still called him on roughing the passer, which I thought was a bullcrap call. Mostly, I guarantee you they did it because this is Las Vegas. The refs have always been an issue in the NFL, at least a lot these past couple of seasons, and that's just one of those calls that, in a normal season, I don't think the refs would have made. But it's not a normal season. You had the Cardinals beat the Cowboys, so I'm not too surprised. Another thing that has not gone the way that I've expected this season is we currently sit at the top of the division. Now, it's tied, basically, us, the Browns, and the Ravens for the top of the division, but because of a couple of statistics that I honestly cannot remember off the top of my head, they have us positioned at the top of the division with the Ravens below us, the Browns below them, and the Bengals obviously in last. They're the only team in this division that hasn't won any games. And as I'm recording this, they're currently playing. It's over on the TV right next to me, which is why I'm kind of darting my head over here to see what's going on, because I've got Puka Nacua on my fantasy team, or one of my fantasy teams, and I'm just hoping that he has a stellar game, which looks like it's happening until the Bengals get an interception, which just happened, I guess. Outside of just the specifics of this game, the game looked rough. And let's talk about Canada for a second. I can't remember if I brought this up or not. The Cleveland game, we looked bad on when it came to offensive play calling. This game, we started out bad. The first half of the game was pretty bad. It was the same nonsense, same predictable plays. After halftime, though, the plays started to get more advanced, more varied. We started, doing better stuff. Now, it didn't result in too many, really big plays, but that's what happens when you go from not playing, a switch-up offense at all to only playing that. And we looked good. We did. There were catches being made. They weren't big ones, and we kind of went out every now and then. But we were looking good. We were looking varied. And I don't care if we lose a game as long as we're starting to experiment with a different style of offense than what Canada's been doing. And it looks like that was happening until the back half of the fourth quarter. We went right back to that run-pass offense, and it drove me nuts. Because we'd been experimenting all game. And now we're in a position where the Ravens could come back, not the Ravens, the Raiders could come back, and they could win. And we were basically just relying on, figuring out the game. And I understand, going back to what Canada found familiar, makes sense. But as I said, I would rather us lose this game, but be grown as players instead, than just to win the game, being the most predictable team and just winning by a small margin, which also, it doesn't help that, once we hit 23 points, it looked like we stopped trying. We were dropping passes, and we weren't going for those long throws down the field. It looked like we stopped trying after a while. And that's not great, because what happens if the Raiders do come back, and they do get a couple points more than us? And we're now in the position of, we haven't been trying. We were just going to let our lead slide, and now we're losing again. And so, especially in the NFL, you cannot, just sit around after you get a substantial lead. I mean, unless you've scored 70 points in a game, like a certain aquatic creature did against a certain, horse team, which really upset my dad because he's both a Steelers fan and a Broncos fan. But hey, it's the NFL in 2023. The Texans won. The Cardinals won this week. The Bengals look bad. The Chiefs lost week 1. I don't know what to tell you. But all that being said, I'm really concerned about next week's game because next week, if I'm not mistaken, we play the Texans. And the Texans actually look decent this week. After that, of course, we play the Ravens. And I don't know anymore. My schedule, my prediction list is just out the window at this point. I don't know who we're beating anymore because of everything that's happened in the league, everything that we've done. But hopefully we can beat the Texans. Hopefully we can beat the Ravens. And that'll put us 4-1, I think. And at that point, I think we'll be on the right track because we're going into the bye week. And I know that, switching out offensive coordinators in the middle of the season wouldn't be great, but it's week 6, and I'm going to jump on the bandwagon. I've seen a lot of people on Facebook be on this bandwagon too. If Big Ben wants to come back as offensive coordinator, I feel like we should just go ahead and let him. Matt Canada has obviously not been doing a good job. I mean, it's not completely his fault that we've been not great. I mean, Kenny Pickett looks uncomfortable in the pocket. The receivers are dropping easy passes. But a lot of it can be fixed with a better offensive coordinator, with more varied plays, so the defense doesn't get used to our plays. And I think somebody like Big Ben, who played for a year under Matt Canada, who knows how to call his own plays, because at the end of his career, he was calling all of his own plays, I think bringing him in as our offensive coordinator would not be a Jeff Saturday incident, like when the Colts brought in Jeff Saturday to be their head coach. Because for one, Big Ben wouldn't be our head coach, and for two, Big Ben is the quarterback. He knows what he's doing. He was the play caller. He was, right there with the offensive coordinator later on in his career, making the plays. And he had all the plays memorized. He was calling audibles. He was the person that, would be a good fit for an offensive coordinator, whereas Jeff Saturday was the dude who stood in the middle, threw the ball between his legs, and hugged the dude in front of him. So, and I don't mean to, say that just to like demean what centers do, because centers are very important, and I'm sure they have a lot more knowledge on the game than I do. But I just feel like a quarterback would be a much better fit for an offensive coordinator or even a head coach than a center would. But that's my take. We did win this week, and we won last week, and hopefully we can win again next week. But it's the NFL. We don't know what's going to happen week to week. We could lose, we could win, we could tie. I don't know, but I want to hear what you guys think about it. How do you think the week 3 of the NFL, specifically in the case of Steelers or generally in the case of any team, how do you think it went? Give me your opinions on our team. Give me your opinions on my thoughts about who our next offensive coordinator should be and whether or not you think that it's even Matt Canada's fault to begin with. Leave all those in the comment section down below. While you're down there, leave a like on the video if you did enjoy it and subscribe to the channel for more content in the future about the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I've also thought about branching off and doing just general NFL news at some point in the future, but for this season at least, I'm sticking with just the Pittsburgh Steelers. Anyways, I have been Brian, this has been Steel Nation, and go Steelers.